as you might think.
There is great potential for tragic choices based on incorrect information.
This couple lost their baby. Was a danger sign overlooked? Dr. Timothy Johnson with an important warning for pregnant women. Mother, beware. Those stories tonight, December 27th, 1991.
Tonight, news from the medical world that's going to come as a surprise to many people. This may, in fact, be the first time that the issue has gotten national attention. Our story focuses on the special needs of pregnant women, but there are lessons here for anyone who ever undergoes special diagnostic testing.
At different times, many of us have probably wondered how doctors make sense of test results. We just assume that they know what they're doing. But at the very least, when it comes to prenatal testings, sometimes they don't know. And as ABC News medical editor Dr. Timothy Johnson shows us tonight, some expectant mothers have found out only too late.
Today, almost all pregnant women will have some prenatal testing. Tests done before birth to detect abnormalities in the developing fetus.
I don't think we're going to go to the nursery today now.
Prenatal tests were originally conceived for older pregnant women who are at higher risk for abnormalities like Down syndrome, or for women with specific medical problems like high blood pressure or diabetes.
I want a boy. You want a boy?
But many women who are young and healthy also want prenatal screening to see if their baby is healthy.
It's a boy.
The most common test is an ultrasound exam, a technique which uses sound waves to form an image of the fetus.
Sonogram is not really a replacement for an amniocentesis.
But more and more women are also asking for either amniocentesis or CVS testing, invasive tests which actually obtain fetal fluid or cells from the womb.
Well, we're looking at the fetus's head.
What most women do not realize about all three of these common prenatal tests is that they are not routine, simple tests. Without proper training, obstetricians can make tragic mistakes in doing and interpreting them.
This is my seat.
Virginia and Robert LaMonica know that now.
I can't sit here. It's my seat.
When Mrs. LaMonica went into labor in May of 1990, they told little Anthony he would soon have a baby brother.
We're almost done here.
But the son they named Michael died 2 weeks after he was born. It was a tragedy for which they were not prepared.
The worst thing is leaving that hospital without a baby. That was the worst feeling. Now, after I had my first one, he was like, we were so happy. We were beaming for weeks. And then the second time you expected it to be the same way. You know, and we went out of the hospital empty-handed.
Despite several operations, Michael died of congenital heart problems and a rare condition called a diaphragmatic hernia, meaning his abdominal organs were up inside his chest cavity. In the days after losing him, the LaMonicas began to wonder why they didn't know about his medical problems before he was born. After all, Mrs. LaMonica had 5 ultrasound examinations during her pregnancy. She had them done here at her doctor's Long Island office, the last one just shortly before the baby's birth. After each ultrasound examination, her doctor said everything looked fine, even though Mrs. LaMonica felt there was something wrong. Virginia LaMonica's doctor refused our request for an on-camera interview. But in an extensive telephone interview, he described finding excessive fluid in the womb on the ultrasound done at 35 weeks of pregnancy. Experts say that finding is a danger sign for possible abnormalities, and that Mrs. LaMonica's doctor should have referred her immediately to a specialist in sonography. But he did not, and in fact did 3 more sonograms before she gave birth.
I don't know what they use it for, if they can't see problems like this. Now, according to the doctor that did the operations, the problems were major.
You always hold my hand when you do these things, don't you? The arms and legs moving down.
Yeah.
In the average obstetrician's office, most patients typically undergo a basic ultrasound exam early in pregnancy. Most practitioners can identify such things as the fetus's age, its position, the location of the placenta, maybe the sex of the child. And if the pregnancy is normal, that's enough. But if the patient is at high risk, or if problems are suspected, something more is required, namely a sonogram specialist who is capable of identifying more complicated problems and conditions.
Dr. Roy Philly of the University of California at San Francisco is a leading expert in the field of sonography. Dr. Philly says without special training and years of experience, even life-threatening conditions like baby lamonicas are overlooked. In fact, he says a lot of developmental problems, also known as fetal anomalies, are routinely missed.
It's very difficult for somebody who doesn't have that much experience with anomalies to have a good feeling for how that anomaly might look on the given sonogram.
Some referral centers for high-risk cases focus on sonography. Others, like Detroit's Hutzel Hospital, are nationally known for amniocentesis and CVS, the other two major prenatal tests offered today.
This is going to feel cold, wet, and kind of disgusting.
Dr. Mark Evans is the director of the Center for Fetal Diagnosis and Therapy.
See, this is how we build a rapport with our patients. You know, if you have regular OB care, you know, just normal labor and delivery, you don't need the high-risk specialist who doesn't actually, in fact, do that much of that. But it's when you have an instance where there is a risk of a real problem that you do want the guy who does that and nothing but. It was so much fun. I'm going to do it again.
Amniocentesis, or CVS, are typically recommended for women over 35 or in other high-risk cases.
See, the baby's spinal column looks like a railroad track.
Unlike sonography, which can show structural abnormalities, CVS and amniocentesis detect genetic problems like Down syndrome. Both procedures are potentially risky because they involve inserting instruments into the womb.
Try and relax now.
During amniocentesis, the fetus's position is located with ultrasound.
We have nice clear fluid.
Then the doctor places a needle into the woman's abdomen to withdraw fluid from the womb.
Is that the baby to the right of it? That's the head to the right of the baby.
That fluid is studied for many possible abnormalities, including Down syndrome.
They have a little bit of blood from the skin.
Amniocentesis is usually performed between 16 and 18 weeks, though in some cases it can be done earlier. It carries about a 1% risk of miscarriage.
We're not going to let you fall off the table. Nobody has all morning.
The alternative to amniocentesis is CVS, or chorionic villus sampling, which suctions tissue from the placenta. Recent studies suggest that CVS carries a higher risk for miscarriage than amniocentesis. But the advantage is that it can be done earlier, usually between 9 and 12 weeks.
For couples who do choose to have prenatal tests, getting them done well is only half the story. Having them interpreted accurately is also essential. In fact, what experts fear most is the result of prenatal misdiagnoses. That is, parents-to-be who are told that their fetus has a problem for which there is no help. And with hundreds of thousands of women every year opting for prenatal tests, there is great potential for tragic choices based on incorrect information.
June Hinkle says she almost lost her baby that way. At 42, the veteran nurse knew she was at higher risk, but she didn't expect what the doctors told her.
They said that probably he wouldn't survive the pregnancy, but if he were to make it, his prognosis was extremely grim. And, of course, the other side of the coin was they suggested termination.
Doctors told the Hinkles to be grateful for the 4 children they had and to consider her pregnancy an unfortunate circumstance. But June was angry. She demanded more information.
It didn't seem believable to me that there wasn't something for me. So I asked them if there was a second opinion that could have possibly be of help to me.
June did what all patients should be doing. She asked questions and got more information. Her persistence led her to Dr. Evans and a treatment which saved her baby's life. 19-month-old Jeffrey Blake is now happy and healthy.
Can you give Dad 5?
Doctors are concerned that there are more cases like the Hinkles, but without their happy ending. So if more babies could be saved by referrals, why isn't it happening more often? Experts say sometimes it's a matter of the doctor's financial bottom line.
If a person can keep a patient or a client in their own practice, they can bill for whatever they do, whereas if they refer it out, they don't get to bill.
A hernia has come up from below.
Dr. Philly says that a slowness to refer is a particular problem in sonography because sonography is often considered to be a harmless and easy procedure, something that doctors think they can learn in a short time.
They should say it's in the wrong position.
That's correct. Their formal training often consists of 3 or 4 day courses offered by the manufacturer who provides the instrument to them. And from that point on, they go ahead and begin doing office sonography.
Not just ultrasound, by the way.
And a former ultrasound equipment salesman confirms that training is minimal. What's more, he says, money is a big factor.
Whether you buy the equipment outright or whether you lease it, because of what you can charge for the exams. And of course, if that's done 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, you've paid for the equipment in 6 months. After that, it's profit. And that's good business.
And the Lamonicas say, ultimately, it is the patient who must protect her own interest.
The mother knows how she feels. I mean, I knew something was wrong. I really felt something was not right.
Just don't let the doctors control the pregnancy. If they don't answer your question, make them answer your question or go to another doctor.
I think asking questions is one of the toughest things to do because it sounds as if you don't trust your doctor. But suppose that the ultrasound looks fine. Then should you go for a second opinion?
Most obstetricians are competent to do an ultrasound exam early in pregnancy, which is for minimal information, mainly to date the pregnancy. If you have any reason to suspect something more sophisticated in terms of birth defects later in pregnancy, I really think you need to go to a referral center, a center that specializes, that has the latest equipment. The equipment is changing constantly, new equipment. The obstetrician in the office can't keep up buying a new machine every 6 months or every year.
You're better at the referral center. What about the Lamonicas? Suppose they had a second opinion.
It's hard to say that it would have made a difference in the final outcome, but it would have done 2 things. It would have prepared them emotionally, and it probably would have dictated that the birth occur at a major center where they might have been able to handle some of the complications.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
Later in the hour, healing physically and emotionally from the horrors of a flash fire. The victims, firefighters, and the small town they live in. But first, lawmakers caught in the act of selling their votes. They didn't know there was a hidden camera in the room and that the man with the cash was an undercover agent. A Tom Jarrell report, Bribes, Lies, and Videotape. Would your local lawmaker take a bribe? Would he or she sell his soul? Would a wad of cash be enough to get a key vote in the legislature? Well, in a moment, you'll meet some elected officials who did sell out. What they didn't know is that they were being videotaped. And you hate to hear about this kind of thing because it's more than wrong, it's evil. Because it undermines public trust in the thousands of dedicated, honest, and well-meaning office holders. Tom Jarrell first brought us this story last summer. And out in Arizona, they're still talking about it.
Arizona, deserts and mountains in a land where time almost appears to stand still. This is the youngest state in the lower 48 and one of the fastest growing. The population here has quadrupled since World War II. It's a place where progress coexists with tradition and where things are not always as they seem.
The dome of the state capitol is shiny and proud, sheathed in copper dug from Arizona's mines and hammered into shape by local craftsmen. But the people of the state are still coming to grips with the deep political tarnish beneath that dome.
It wasn't bad enough that a governor was impeached in this chamber 3 years ago, or that both of the state's senators were members of the so-called Keating Five. Now the scandal is right here in the Arizona legislature. The state's motto is God enriches, but for some of Arizona's legislators, that wasn't enough.
100, hundreds, 10,000.
8 legislators were caught up in a videotape bribery sting that wrecked careers, ruined reputations, and revealed the raw ugliness of greed, all in living color. This is freshman state representative Sue Levy.
Having tacky fingers.
This is 3-term representative Bobby Raymond.
I understand where I'm coming from. I don't give a about issues. There is not an issue in this world that I give about. Okay. I do deals.
Right. That's what I
mean, I do deals.
I'm doing one.
Bobby Raymond's latest deal is with a prosecutor. He's pleaded guilty to 5 felonies, each documented on tape.
So you got a camera in here taping all
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
You got those people on TV.
25. No, you're on Canon camera. No, there's 50. Hold on a second.
This was not a sting run by the FBI or another high-powered federal agency. It was put together, designed, and run on a first-time basis by a local police department and a brand-new county prosecutor.
This is bribery. I mean, it's bribery. There is
Richard Romley is the prosecutor for Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix. A Vietnam veteran whose legs were shattered by an enemy landmine, he ran for office on a clean government platform. But he says he was shocked when a routine gambling investigation turned up evidence that lawmakers' votes were for sale.
You know, this state, Arizona, did not need this type of publicity again. And you know it's going to create some problems, but you just don't stand for it. And that's my job, and you go forward.
I just drew upon every wise guy resource that I had used in my actual life.
This man was the key to the investigation, the bait and the trap all in one.
I'd been to prison. Now here I was working for the county attorney as an agent consultant.
Joe Stadino, a three-time loser with a winning smile. He agreed to talk to 2020 with his lawyer present. Stadino is a convicted felon who had been recommended to local authorities by the FBI after a successful federal sting operation in Nevada. That sting netted $10.5 million in drug money. In Arizona, the issue was whether to legalize casino gambling. Word was out that some legislators might be willing to sell votes on the issue. To find out, prosecutors had Stadino create a role. He became a gangster known as Tony Vincent.
I was as mafioso Tony as you could get. Word spread that Tony Vincent was in town and had a ton of money, and if you wanted to commit your vote and your influence to Tony, why, just go see Tony and talk to him.
And talk to him they did. Here's Carolyn Walker, Majority Whip of the Arizona Senate.
10,000 would get me out of financial difficulty.
Is that your comfort level?
Actually, I'd really rather have 15 to 10 would get me out of difficulty.
You want 10 or 15?
I like 15.
That'll straighten you out.
That'll straighten me out.
And you're committed to me. I have your support.
I was committed to you regardless.
Are you committed to me?
I said I was committed to you regardless.
Are you committed to me?
Yes, I am.
Do I have your support?
You do indeed.
Carolyn Walker is on tape accepting a total of $25,880.
I am an ambitious woman. Okay.
She's under indictment for 9 felonies.
At least I want to lose back rich.
Her attorney says these tapes don't tell the whole story.
She denies emphatically that she committed any crime. She took the money. She needed that to pay off debts. She took the money because he gave it to her, and it was a gift to her. But she did not sell her vote.
Was enough money shown to her with her background that she would have been impressed by it, persuaded by it, as far as this is a substantial amount of money?
No question about that. They gave this fellow Stadino thousands and thousands of dollars, and he would take out a wad of bills, I think, that would even make your eyes open up, Tom.
You know, they say that because you have put so much money in front of them, they couldn't resist it.
Right.
That's a lousy argument. That's a lousy argument. I don't care what should be brought before you. You should not sit there and sell your vote for a special interest group.
The money never came out till they asked for it. And Tom, God forgive me for telling the truth, but I was just surprised I didn't have to put a revolving door on the office to allow easier access. I even said on one tape to someone, I said, if this continues, I'm going to have to put a revolving door on the office with a teller window.
One by one, like flies to a spider's web, legislators were lured here to an ordinary-looking office building across town from the state capitol. Up there in Suite 340, they got the Joe Stadino alias Tony Vincent treatment. What do you need? What do you want? What can I do for you? How much will it take?
Slip back for a moment into the role of Tony Vincent.
Yo.
Put me in the role of Tom Legislator coming in. Tell me how you would talk to me for a second about legalized gambling, and you want my support.
Okay. Well, Tom, I guess you've talked with my lobbyist, and you understand what we're trying to do here. The idea here is that we want to get casinos in the state of Arizona. Now, my associates and I, we got our eye on 7 locations. We want to put 3 in Phoenix, 1 in Tucson, 1 in Sedona. If I spend $10 million and just get 1 joint open in Yuma, I'll be tickled to death. If it costs me $100 million, I don't care, because I'll make my money back the first year. Do you understand? Yeah. That's what we're all about.
Every persuasive word of the sting and every incriminating action went on tape.
20, 40. Do we have to count this? Can't we just take your word? Well, there's 55,000.
The local authorities bought an arsenal of electronic equipment to document their case. The cameras were easily hidden.
That's good. Perfect.
The lens opening on this camera is tiny. Joe Hollenbeck watches over this equipment for the Phoenix Police Department.
Where is the audio? It's from a wire worn by your informant?
Not necessarily. You can have almost the same situation. The microphone can be concealed anywhere in carpeting, in the roof, or anywhere.
So when someone comes into a room and says, is there a camera here? With today's technology, it's virtually impossible to say there's not if you want to hide one, isn't it?
That's correct.
Put it in your clothing, put it in a bag, put it in a potted plant, put it in your shoe. You could put it in your, they're wearing them now in football helmets.
Right.
There's no end to where the little peeping eye can be.
That's true.
True, even in this hotel room. In a meeting with 3 of his targets, Tony decides to show them their safe, that he's not wearing a wire.
I don't have any trouble getting naked. I'm proud of my body.
The microphone is actually hidden in the furniture.
I consistently was the wise guy, and I stayed the same. I was consistently a tainted. Tony was a guy that would step outside the law. There was no mistake about it. In fact, one of the newspaper articles that came out of California stated that Stadino's performance was equal to a De Niro or Pacino. I liked that article. 8 people walked. 8 legislators beat it out the door. See, that's an interesting thing that no one has talked about. So there's 8 that took the money and 8 that didn't. It's kind of a push.
So not everyone went for it?
No, sir.
This man didn't go for it. In fact, he went to the law instead. Jack Jewett is a member of the House from Tucson.
I first laid eyes on the now infamous Tony Vincent here at the restaurant.
The 2 of them had lunch with one of Jewett's colleagues.
Jack? Tony? This is Tony Vincent? How do you do, Jack? Pleased to meet you.
What really tipped me that something is fundamentally wrong here was at the end of the luncheon when he flashed wads of $100 bills.
Did he make a cash offer to you in the restaurant?
He did not make an offer, but I took my concerns the next morning via phone call to then Attorney General Bob Corbin.
I wish I'd never met Tony Vincent. I wish I would have walked that money back into his office. And I wish I would have walked right back down to the Attorney General's office and turned them in.
Instead, Sue Laby went to jail. She accepted over $24,000 in a series of meetings with Tony that started innocently enough.
She accepted a legal contribution of $220. And Tony would have bet the store that Sue Laby would not be back. And within approximately 90 days, Sue Laby reached out for Tony and asked for $10,000 and offered to not only vote yes for legalized gaming, but to co-sponsor the bill.
The trap is sprung, but this investigation still troubles Rick Romilly. In a reflective moment at his home late one night, we talked about that.
The definite impression that I got out of being with this case for so long, it was kind of a way of doing business for some of these. It was sort of an attitude. Sometimes I even wondered if they knew what they were doing was wrong.
Who were the victims of that case?
All of us. All of us. Really, the entire community. Yeah. Not just in the direct ways that we can see through the passage of laws, but that breach of faith. And that's incalculable.
Should people be shocked or surprised by this exchange of money, or is this the way of doing business, and does it still go on today in the legislature of Arizona?
I think it still goes on, but it probably doesn't go on with the cash. There was a reference made about, in the tapes, about that we were unsophisticated whores. I think the sophisticated ones are still out there doing it. One of the typical lines down there is, it's all right to do it. If you get caught, you put the Twinkies back.
Put the Twinkies back.
Put the Twinkies back.
And watch out for hidden cameras.
Absolutely.
What's happened since this whole...
Barbara, all 8 are out of the legislature. 7 of the 8 have pled guilty. Only Carolyn Walker plans to go to trial and contest in court.
Well, I gather she says that she was going to support Tony Vincent anyway, therefore she's not responsible?
Right. That's her claim, is to justify why she took the money. In fact, of all of these people, they felt they weren't really doing anything all that illegal. They thought it was sort of like business as usual for legislators to take this money until they saw themselves on videotape, and that's when they realized...
They said, gee, maybe.
Yeah.
Otherwise, politics as usual,
Yeah.
huh? Sweet story. Thanks, Tom.
Right. Well, next, Stone Phillips with a story that salutes the very best qualities of people and close-knit